Ingrid, thanks for joining me on the SteadFast Running podcast.
It's nice to be there.
You have fans all over the world, including here in the United States, where you won many big races. But I'd like to start when you were just a child growing up in Norway. As I understand it, you were a cross-country skier, and that's something that you carried over into your training later on as an adult. How did cross-country skiing benefit your running?
I think being a cross-country skier in Norway is good for the heart and lung training. It's soft for your legs and it's fun because you go into the forest, going for hours on tracks in the forest. So I like to be a skier and I think that helps me to be a really good runner when I switched over to only being a runner when I really became good as a long distance runner.
In your opinion, how old should kids be before they start training every day and doing hard workouts?
I started to train every day when I was around 15, 16 years old, but I never had sort of really hard intervals. I just were out there biking, skiing, running, have fun in the forest. And I had a lot of girls who I was running with in my ski team in my hometown. And we did a lot of things. Of course, something was interval, but it was not like you have to do 10 times that and that. And we did never training on the track. We did it for fun. And of course, I think when you are kids, you do a lot of intervals without knowing it.
Yes.
That was my way to do my kind of training when I was young.
Perfect. Yes. Norway has always produced great endurance athletes, not the least of which was Greta Weiss, a 9-time New York City champion. What role did she play in your development as a runner?
The one thing who helps me with Greta was that she went out being a runner in the world, and she became one of the best. And being in Norway, training as much as her, but I was a skier. So when I switched over to the running, I think if she can do it, I can do it. So that was the help, that being from Norway, a little country in North Europe, if she can do it, I can do it. And that was the way she helps me. But I never trained with her. And I never did things help. She didn't help me to be the good runner. Only when I was competing with her, trying to beat her then for years when I was a skier in the beginning.
Do you have any memories of a race where you and Greta were competing fiercely?
Oh yeah, I ran with her from I was 15 years old when I was a skier and she was a runner. And the longest distance a woman could do that at that time was 1,500 meter, and I was close to her. And but she was a runner coming from 400 meter on the track, and I was a skier. So I was okay for me to be beaten by her because I was a skier. This was my second sport, so that was okay. But a little bit later, some years later, I became a runner, and then it was more important for me to try to beat her.
I was not old enough to see any of your races or record-breaking performances live on TV or in person. Of course, nowadays we have YouTube and many articles have been written about your accomplishments. It would be interesting to hear from your perspective which performances meant the most to you on a personal level.
I think the European Championship on 10,000 meter in 1986. There was the first European Championship in 10,000 meter on the track, and everybody thought this will be a really boring event because it was 20 girls running 25 laps, and that was one of my greatest, not my greatest race, but I think it was one of my nicest events, because when I ran in that race, they start the wave on the track and field race. That was the first time they're starting the wave, and it helped me to really push myself and winning that race. So that was one of the biggest events of feeling doing really well.
The Houston Marathon is still a big deal here in the USA. We've had our women's half marathon and marathon records go down in Houston in recent years. And of course, you are a two-time Houston Marathon winner, 1983, 1984, where you ran 2:27:51. That's where you broke 2:30 for the first time. What was it that took your running to the next level? Because in 1981, you were running close to the 2:40s, and then you made that big jump. Was it Coach Kagestad or something that you did differently in training?
Yes, in the early 80s, I still was a skier. So I ran just because I liked to run and did a lot of competitions in the summer. But in 81, I married my husband and moved, and I was finished with my studies in 79, and I started to run a little bit more. And then I won the Stockholm Marathon and Nissan, and I ran a lot of good races. But this change came after the Houston Marathon in 83. When I came home from Houston Marathon, I still trained a lot. I worked in a hospital as a medical engineer. And when I went to the World Cross Country, and I thought I could win the race, but I came on 35th place. And when I came home from that race, I found out I was pregnant. So when I was 5 months pregnant at that time, and when I ran in Houston in 83, I was 3 months pregnant. And this was the year, half a year before the first World Championship in Helsinki, in track and field. So when I found out I was pregnant, I still trained a lot every day. But after these big races, I started to bike and swim a little bit more to get my endurance. My heart and lung was good trained, but my feet was bad because I was gaining a lot of weight. And my goal was to come back after I got this child. And nobody was thinking this is not possible, because almost nobody had done this before in the Western culture. And in Norway, I had only 3 persons who believed in my goal for the next year. There was my coach, Johan Kagestad, his wife, and my husband. So when my son was born in middle of the World Championship, I started to think in 84, I will be the Olympic champion in the marathon. So then I started to do training, and I trained a lot, of course, 1 or 2 a day. And I went back to Houston Marathon when my son was only 4.5 months. And that was my first race under 2:30. I ran 2:27. I thought, this is something. I can make it, because 2:27 at that time was a good time. So I keep going with the training, and I ran the London Marathon just some few months afterwards. And I set the European record, 2:24. And then it was only, I think the only person who had been running faster was John Benoit at that time. So I think I can really be a good long distance runner. So that was the change. The change, I think, was I became a mom.
I love that story.
Big change, because then from being an athlete, thinking of myself and my body the whole time, and of course went to my work, but besides the work, there was the running, who was the most important. But after he was born, the most important for me was to keep this baby happy and try to train as much as I could and be one of the best women long distance runners in the world.
Wow. Yeah, and like you said, that wasn't so common in the 1980s, and very few people believed that you could do that, come back from giving birth and go to world-class level so soon. And throughout your career, Ingrid, you won championships on the track, on the road, on cross country. And as I understand it, a big part of your training consisted of treadmill sessions. And I'm very curious about this because I've been doing a lot of treadmill running lately.
Yeah.
Do you suggest that runners do more of their training on a treadmill, or were you doing it because you had to, due to weather conditions or being a mom, for example?
Of course, I in the beginning, in the early 80s, in 82, 83, I lived in west coast of Norway, and there was no snow. So we could run outside the whole year without snow and so on. But then my husband was changed his work, and we had to move to Oslo. And in Oslo, we have a lot of snow. So the first thing my coach said when I moved to Oslo was, you need a treadmill. So I think I was one of the first persons in Norway who had a treadmill in my basement. And that was because I love to be at home, be with my family, and train as good as I could at home. So my treatment was good. I went skiing maybe 5 times a week because being a cross-country skier before, I could do a lot of the good training on skiing, and that was the old-fashioned skiing. I never skate. I just went old-fashioned skiing. So that made me really strong. I had a little bit more upper body, so I think this helps me to make away this lactic acid. If something come into my body, it's easier to get it away. And during the winter, I train maybe once a day on my treadmill and once a day on skiing. That was the training. And of course, being on the women's field at that time, and I was a typical front runner. I love to run in the front, go from start, push myself to the finish, and try to do my best the whole way. And therefore, a treadmill was good to train on, because then you can try to set the pace and try to keep the pace as long as you feel it was okay. So I get really good to run even then. But of course, starting to run even at 4 minutes per K for a while, and then after some weeks, I could run a little bit faster in same pulse rate, and I'd keep my my speed better and better for every week. So that was good. And I did it also during the whole season. Maybe 2-3 times a week, I had my treadmill sessions the whole summer too. Just to be good on the speed I need to run to be the world's best, to set in records. So I think that's what's good. But of course, you lose something when you train on the treadmill, and you lose some training for your legs. You don't, when you run on the treadmill, you are on the same place the whole time. You are on the same place. And the ground is moving. But when you're training outside, you have to move your body and the ground is standing still. So this is the difference between the treadmill running and the outside running. So then I need to train a little bit legs, something for the legs, and I was jumping with the, what you call,
Jump rope.
Yeah, or I was just jumping on up and down on my ground in the floor at home. So before the big marathons, I could jump, especially in the spring marathon. I jumped maybe twice a week, half an hour, just after running session. So when I did on the treadmill, so I getting strong in my legs. So that was something I did to getting strong and get the best thing out of treadmill training.
Great points. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I'm sure you had some painful losses in your career as well. One race that I'd like for you to revisit, if possible, is the day you came in second to Joni at the 1985 Chicago Marathon, because you were the world record holder at the time, and Joni was, on her home turf, if you will. Could you take us through that race and what you remember about that day?
Yes, I remember. I went to the race as I always do, trying to win the race and trying to set the record. But I had some bad experience, maybe, because it was one of the first times I went to do high altitude training. So I went up to Boulder, Colorado, some weeks and tried to train there. And I think I did some stupid training sessions because of the high altitude, and I didn't know how my body was moving this. And I went down and did some, I think it was a milk run or something I did before, and I didn't do well at that time because my body wasn't prepared for going down. I didn't know when I had to go down after high altitude training. So, that was one of the maybe the stupid things I did before that race. And the second thing was that I went down from Boulder with Robbie Castella. He lived in Boulder. And he always went through the race by car some days before. And he said, be with us. I will be around the course and a limousine will drive us around. And I said, yes, but this was the stupid thing because in the traffic, 42 Ks, you know that 42K is 42K. And I think we used 3 hours because of the traffic jam. So I felt this course was really, sorry. Sorry.
It's okay.
So the traffic jam make it, this is a long race. And the start day went okay in the beginning. We were running together for a long time. And I remember I got my bottle with the drink during the race and Johnny didn't get her. And I gave her my body and a bottle. And she said, I only drink water because I had some sport drink. And after that, she went away from me. And I'm not sure how far ahead of me she came, but I remember this was I was really sad after that race. But then again, I went home and tried to think I will beat her again and I will be better than this race.
So just to go back, that car drive with Rob Di Castella made the course seem really long to you. So psychologically, that was self-defeating, right?
I think so. And so after that, I never went through a race again, a course again. When I went for a race, and it was 30K, 40K, 15K, I never went through the race. I knew that this is 15K, this is 30K, and you have to do the best. That was the learnings about the Chicago Marathon in 85.
And you did come back with a vengeance in 1986, which was one of your best years on the track. Now, I know not every race goes according to plan. That's all runners go through this. And I'm sure that when you think back on the Olympic Games, you have some bittersweet memories too, because you finished 4th in LA and an injury forced you to drop out of the Seoul 10,000 meters. But other than having better luck, because sometimes it comes down to luck, are there any things that you would do differently at the Olympic Games if you had another shot at it?
Yes. 84. You think about the 84? Yes, of course, because after this 84 season, so maybe I did a little bit too many marathons. I pushed myself too much, maybe. After I had my son was 1 week after the Olympic marathon, so I did a little bit too much maybe that year. But the worst thing I think was that the Norwegian coaches and all these people who was with us in the medical team from Norway, they told us that in Los Angeles there will be too warm, it will be pollution, and it will be awful to run. And I was even getting the European record. I think I was good enough, but because everybody told you that this will be bad, it's awful, you have to be careful and all this stuff. And I stopped to think and listen to this part of my body. Go and do your race, and if you don't make it, you have tried. But at the Olympics, I never tried. After 5, because I was the kind of runner, going and try, and if you don't make it, you're not good enough. But in Olympics, when Johnny went away around 5K, I said to Greta, we have to be with her. She can't go. And then I remember the answer I got from Greta. I have to be back here in the pack because she will for sure be too tired. We will get back to her after a while. But we never got back to her. So I became back in the pack. And after we ran past a half marathon or something, I looked around me and I saw runners in the pack where I was going for the second place, who runs many minutes slower than me. So I think this is something. So I start to use negative thinking. So I used a lot of energy of negative thinking. So when I came to the part of the race where Greta picking up this pace, Rosa came, and I had no more energy to go. I got the 4th place, the worst place you can get, and I was very disappointed after that race. So after this race, I never listened to a coach or anybody in the team I had with me. I listened to my body and what my intuition told me to do. So I won a lot of races after that with doing the way I like to run. Maybe I haven't been better than 4th. Maybe I had been 6th place if I had been with Johnny. But then I had tried. I never tried. That was the worst thing in the Olympics in 84.
Yeah, so in hindsight, you should have chased after Joni when she made that early break,
Yes,
but you
yes.
were worried about the heat and what your coaches had
Yeah,
told
because
you.
we have been we're brainwashed more or less from people around us that this is awful. There will be awful to run here. You have to be careful. It's a long way to go, and all these things. So never listen to coach and team leader when you go into a race. That was my feeling after that race.
Yes, trust your instincts.
Yes, trust my instinct.
Now, in 88, could you tell us what happened to your, was it your foot?
Yes, in 88, I had also some problems. During the winter, I went to New Zealand, Australia, Adelaide, and Auckland to win the World Championship 15K and cross country. In the winter, started my season to win these two races. And then I had a lot of training and did a lot of good races. And suddenly something went wrong. I getting less energy and or something was wrong. And I ran a 10,000 meter on Bislett. Didn't go well at all. I think Lisbeth Hogan beat me. But my problem that day, I never dropped out of the race because it was my hometown. I couldn't drop out after having had a world record there. I can't drop out when I became the second place. So I ran the race and I had a really bad stomach problem. So some days afterwards, I found out I had pregnancy outside of the livmor. Outside, what was that? Arve, I heter livmor. Yeah.
We're trying to get a
I can't the
translation.
English word of it. So I had to go to the doctor and get away this. I had more like a motion during the race. So I was pregnant outside of what do you call it? Huh? Uterus. I had a pregnancy outside the uterus.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, that was the word. So what happened then? That was I had to get away of this. Went to this hospital. This was in July. I think it was in the middle of the July. And then I had to keep the training down for a while. And that was not good when the Olympics was coming in September. My mental was also getting worse because when such things happen for a woman, you have some thoughts about what's happening. So I had to drop the training a little bit and try to build up. But the time I had to build up became a little bit too short. So we pushed really hard then to get in shape to the Olympics. So I pushing my body so hard that I got a little bit sore foot. And because we had to do the qualified, we ran first 25 laps for qualifying for the final. So during the qualifying heat on the 10,000 meter, I got a little bit short pain in my foot, but I tried to think it away. Then I had 4 days to go to the final, and I trained a little bit less, and I had some problem. And I went to the final, and after some laps, I don't remember how many laps I was running, 4 or 5 or something, and then I had a big problem with my leg and I had to go out of the race. And that was that was really bad because I knew I was the winner before the start, but you had to race. And the same you can see I was the best runner at that time on the track, 10,000 meter, but I didn't came to the finish. And it's almost the same happened with Paula Radcliffe. She never got a medal in the Olympics. She was the best the next period, but she never got a medal. So you have to, everything must be on your side to really to win. And I had never had something on my side in the Olympics.
Yes, in my mind, I had drawn that connection between you and Paula Radcliffe, but that doesn't take away from, you know, your wonderful career. So yes, in summary, you rushed your preparation.
Yeah, I rushed my preparation. That was the program.
And so maybe you have some advice for people who are trying to prevent injuries. And in this case, it was because you did too much, your training load.
Yeah, I did too much, and I think I had a little bit too much because I hadn't had enough competitions. So I had to push myself maybe more. Also on track session, I almost never. In 1986, my best season, I had only 10 training session on the track. 10 sessions, and when you speak to people today, they are training twice a week, the whole season on the track. I had 9 training sessions on the track. I did a lot of, but in 88, I do too many training sessions on the track to get fit enough to try to win the Olympics.
And I don't blame you, because you don't get another chance until, you know, 4 years later. So you had to, you did your best, like you said. That's what makes you happy, that you do your best with what you're given. One of the unique things about your career as compared to what we see elites doing today is how you were able to race the marathon at a world-class level without sacrificing your track speed. How were you able to manage both of those things?
Yes, that's difficult to say, but I think 1500 meter training for me was almost the same as marathon training. I have a big, because both of it is endurance. 800 meters training is a different word. Then you need to have the lactic acid and you have to run very fast for 2 laps. But I did a lot. I had a really high level on, I could run really fast for a long time. So when I trained for marathon, I don't understand what they are thinking and saying today, because they say, especially in Norway, now we are training specific marathon training. I never done that, because I always ran once a week. I ran 2 hours run, and that was a slow run. Slow run for me at that time, around a little bit slower than 4 minutes per K. That was my slow run, and I did it every week, almost every week, from Easter to this snow was coming, and that was good training for track season and also for a marathon. But before a marathon, I had maybe 2 or 3 training who was more than around 2.5 hours. I run maybe 35K, but I never ran longer. But I ran a lot. I call it distance training or tempo training, where I ran everything from 10 to 15K, a little bit slower than my when my heartbeat is on threshold, a little bit slower than threshold training. So I ran maybe 4 or 5 beeps under my threshold pulse then. So that was the way I was training, and who gave me the good speed for the 10,000 and also for the marathon. And then again, training on all kind of surface. As an old skier, I ran a lot on path, like in the forest, bad paths, slow speed, but it was a good training. And also some a lot of fartlek. So I make it looks easy, but I had fun because I did so many different things, and I went to a lot of competitions, everything from 15K to a marathon at the same in the same period. So I could go for 5K. I never build up for it, but I went to it, and if I ran this 5K a little bit slower than I thought I was good enough to, I went home and think, here is something wrong. I had to get a little bit, I have to run a little bit faster on 5K if I want to run as fast as I want to on the marathon or in a half marathon. And I also ran, instead of what they are doing today, a lot of the Norwegian, for sure, they're running like, they go for a half marathon and run a half marathon in marathon pace as a training for a marathon. And then I used to do what I used to do. I went to a race, half marathon race, and ran as fast as I could. And if I ran then 110 or 106 or 108, I did I multiple side with 2, 108 to 216 plus 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes. Then it's my marathon time. And that was a good training instead of going too many long runs and long competitions into low speed. Today they are running in Norway, a lot of the runners today are running 35K and 30Ks every weekend, and then getting tired instead of having a little bit more speed for the training the day after and the day after and the day after. So I think a lot of the marathon runners is doing that today. I'm afraid they are doing that. For sure in Norway. I'm not sure what they are doing in the US, but in Norway they are doing it. And we have not many good marathon runners in Norway anymore.
Yes, the trend everywhere, I think, is to specialize either on the track or on the roads. But it sounds like you kept variety in your training program, and you didn't try to just increase your volume and run more and more. You kept the intensity high as well throughout the year.
That was good for me and gave me good results. And I'm surprising that not more people are trying this today. Like they are going almost for in Norway. We had nobody doing cross country and road, short and long races. They are saying, no, I'm training for a marathon, or I am training for a 10,000, or I am training for this and this. You can train, you can do all these things and getting better in the race you want to be good in. That helps me then to, and then also the training, it's getting more interesting. It's not the same every week, and we did a lot of nice things. No, I don't think any week was the same at all. And changing the whole time. But my coach was like, you have to do this and you have to do that. That was the starting of our connection. And I said, yeah, but this I don't like to do, because I don't like to do 10 times 1,000 meters every Monday. And I don't like to do fartlek on Thursday. You can change it. Maybe 5 times 2,000 meters, or do different things. So it's make it more nice to do the training instead of going to the same place to run the same every week. That don't fit me. So I did I think I educate my coach to think a little bit different. As he said afterwards, after some years, that I was his most difficult athlete who asked more about why. So he became a really good coach then, because I gave him so many asks of me. So it's important that the athlete have to think by yourself, like the athlete I am coaching now. I said, this was good for me, but I don't know that it's good for you. So you have to give me what do you like to do. So we have to make a program who fits you in the same way of thinking. But the athlete has to do the training. So you have to be happy as an athlete.
The things that your coach taught you, you pass on to your athletes now.
Yeah.
After you retired from professional running in the early 1990s, did you continue racing as a masters runner, or did you find another outlet for your competitive nature?
I have almost no competition after I finished my running. After I finished my running, I had 3 kids. So I had a lot of things to do. The first years, of course, I train almost every day. That's the part of my life. I still do that, but it's everything. Every year it's getting slower. I know I'm walking more than I'm running, but still I'm happy being out there and do my exercising. So, but I never compete. I went to some races because they want me to come race the race. I had maybe a speech or something, or they want me to be a rabbit for a 3.5 hour marathon runs. It was some years in Japan, and I went away. But I also ran in Disney half marathon twice after I was finished as a runner, but I never compete. I was more in the backpack as a local runner. But yes, in Boston Marathon, when it was 100 years of anniversary, I went back and ran. I thought I was running as a fun runner because I was back in the pack. But it was so easy and felt so good. So I came second place without knowing it because I was back in the pack. So the two Italian girls, Lorraine Muller won the race. She was the year 92. I think it was the 92. I don't remember when it was, but she was the best. And there was 2 Italian girls who also turned 40. They thought they came second and third. But because we had the ship in the start of the ship on the shoes, so when I was in the back, I used maybe 2 minutes to come to the starting line. So my watch was starting 2 minutes after them. So I never saw them, and they saw never me, but I came. So that was the only race I went doing good as a master runner.
Was this, you said this was the 100th anniversary of the Boston Marathon?
I think so. I was 40, and that was in 40. Just turned 40 that year. I'm born in 56. 96 was in
96. Yeah, and I don't think that can happen anymore because now they go off. Right, they go off.
Because I remember I was in a cross country and road running committee, international, at that time, and we was discussing this point of view. What happened if athletes who think they are second or beating one in the backpack? You can't do that anymore. So it's not possible. But in 96, it was possible. I won $4,000 at the race.
What an
I was
amazing
happy.
story. And I thought I knew a lot about the history of our sport. I had never heard this before.
No.
Wow. What do you love about running, Ingrid? I mean, besides the winning and being the best, when you're trying to talk to other runners about our sport and maybe they haven't yet fallen in love with running, what was it about running for you that really hooked you?
It hooked me because it was so easy. You don't need anything more than a pair of shoes, and you can run all over. Because I came from the cross country skiing, then you need ski and you need track, you need snow, and you never live where the snow is and all this stuff. So it's more difficult sport. Running is much more easy. You can run all over. If you live in a big city, you can run in a big city. You find a park, or as I'm been so happy that I live in Norway, we can run in the forest, nice nature, in the mountains. So I feel free when I'm running, and it's nice feeling. Not so nice now because now it's harder. So I found out that it's nicest to work. But still, I like to do some of the running, but it's not the same feeling anymore because you know that it's so much nicer and you feel in better form than you are in now. But the running, it's the easiest sport you can do. Everybody can walk or run if you have two legs. So it's one of the easiest sport you can do. You don't need, and a long distance, you don't need a coach to tell you run this and this. Because if you love to run and you go out running and you listen to your body and to the intuition, not to the watch you have now, you can be in good shape. It's an easy sport. Compared to the long jump, sprint. Sprint is much more difficult. Then you need a coach to look at you almost on every training because you can do so many different things. But the long distance, the way you are running, it's not so important. If you are good enough trained, you can really do it good in the long distance running. As I try to tell this and you have to be happy with running, and you need to be happy training by yourself. For 90% of all my training, I did by myself in the forest, in the mountains, on my treadmill. So you need to love to do this to really be good, or being on what level you want to be. No, as I used to say, if you want to be Norwegian, if you say, I will be Norwegian champion, yes, yeah, then you can be Norwegian champion. But if you say, I want to be world's best, then you have more, then you can be the Norwegian champion and a European champion, or maybe you can be the world champion. But if you say, I will be the Norwegian champion, you will for sure not reach the next level. So make your goal a little bit higher than you think you can do, then you can make it if you have fun during the way you are training up to the goal.
Beautiful. I can relate to all those sentiments.
Yeah, you agree?
I agree. And I know that getting old is hard too.
Yeah, and then some legs. For me now, it's worse to running downhill because I feel a little bit sore in my knees. It's better to going uphill, but then it's getting too hard. So, but that's the life. I have done my races, and I don't need to win anything more. So I'm happy so long I can walk or run and have fun.
Let's talk about your coaching. We have a lot of coaches that listen to this podcast. So I'm curious, when did you start coaching, and how many athletes are you currently working with?
My coaching is not not the best in Norway. I'm sorry for that, but I've never been asked to train anybody in Norway. So that's why, I don't know. But maybe because I am telling what to do and say, if you're not good enough, you have to train where you are not good. It's easier to train the thing you like to do. But if you want to be really good, you need to look a little bit side and say, oh, I'm not enough speed for what I want to do. I'm not good enough at endurance. So maybe that's one of the reasons. But I train when I train, for example, one junior who's going to the World Championship orienteering now. So that's the best athlete I have. But I try to tell people to build up slowly. Most have problem to they think it's easy to train up to be good. They want to go under 35 minutes on 10K, and they are maybe 38 minutes runner. 3 minutes, it's a lot of time. So you have to go step by step, building up. Don't pushing too hard. Don't train too much, because compared to cross-country skiing, I train some who switch over from cross-country skiing to running, and they are cross-country skiers are training a lot in hours. But if they changed over to running and try to run the same amount hours, you break down for short time. So you have to build up short, step by step. And that was, I think this is one of the worst things people doing today. And I also think that watches like this, this is a good way of making the training right if you use the watch right. But if you meet a lot of runners today, when you meet them and they have to stop, what 4 runners coming and you meet them and they have to stop, what they are doing, everybody's stopping the watch. Because if they don't stop the watch, the speed in the training session getting slower. Yeah, that is one. We didn't have these kind of watches. So I thought maybe I was running 10K, but I never, maybe my training session was only 9K, but I was happy with the training. I didn't know how fast or slow I was running. But today, you know everything at the time where we are training. So that's one of the things I try to do with my athletes. Say to them, take off the watches now and then and see if you can train without. So that's one of my thing I tell my athletes, and the most of the athletes are I have 2, 3 who is just under the best level in the Norwegian on the 10,000 meter. But I'm sure that they are not believing in what I did. I don't think even they see in my books what I have done. I don't think they believe in what I didn't do and more or less. Because today I'm not sure if it's the same in the US, but in Norway and in Europe for sure. They are training more. I have athletes who coming and telling me they're running 13 and 14,000 meters as a training session, and they're running 5-6 minutes slower than I did. And say, why? Yeah, because we have to. because we are training for a marathon. And I try to tell them, I believe that if you're training 10 is the most. I never trained more than 10,000 meters. And what I did in between the intervals, I jogged and I ran. So I never stand still in a training session. So it's too much of the high intensity training. So many of the athletes are too tired when they come to the competition because they used to compete on every training because of the watches, because of the people they are training with. So they count everything. So they are more or less tired when they come to the competition. I was fresh when I come to the competition because I wasn't competing when I was training. When I lived in Boulder, for example, I tried to go for a long distance a Sunday long run with some of the athletes living up there. I did it once because after 3K, everybody was ahead of me. Everybody was running faster and I was running slower. I didn't care. I ran because I had a nice training. And maybe a week after, we were competing and I beat them with 2 laps on the track in 10,000. And they couldn't believe why. I said, yeah, because it's big difference between winning a long run, Sunday run. It's easy to win a long Sunday run, but it's harder to win a competition on 10,000 meters on the track on another day. So I try to tell my athletes that when you're training to build up to doing good on the competition. You have to stay away of competing every time you are doing a hard training session. Then you are tired when you go into a competition. I'm not sure if you understand what I was trying to tell you.
Oh, absolutely. As a coach myself, I'm
Yeah.
here nodding my head because let's review the things you said again. So it's important to be patient, to take those small steps in training. It's also important not to hyper focus on the data that is coming from your GPS watch, for example. And you think that athletes today are doing too much intensity, too much volume, and that they should perhaps be saving those efforts for race day.
Yeah, I think so. Of course, to being really good, you need to train a lot. But what is a lot? If you I have a lot of seeing the data from runners at the same time as me, and I was running between 110 to 200K during a week, during a year. But I took 3 weeks off in after the fall marathon. 3 weeks without training at all. And I don't think anybody almost do that today. And not at that time either. I gained a lot of, I gained maybe 4 or 5 kilos. And I was, it's okay to take a rest from the running. And then it's starting up again. Then it was very important to start when you, not where you stop, when you start and building up. Then my body had a rest and I was more fresh and the form was coming very fast. So I tried to give this advice to my athletes because most of my athletes whom I'm working with are going on full jobs or study. So they can't do as much as these athletes who do nothing. Because when I was at the athletes, most of the athletes, the best athletes in Norway were working full-time or study full-time and training at the same time. And a lot of these athletes still has good times. As 2:13 on the men's side in Norway, it's almost nobody is running 2:13 today. I don't think it's anybody. But in the 80s, we had a lot of them. and they were full, but they were more, when they were training, they trained, when they were working, they worked. So they were more focused when they are training. And I think if you have too much time to training, I believe that there will be too much focus on thinking about everything. Is you don't I don't think it's good, because you are thinking your own body 24 hours a day. If you have something else, you have focus on other things during a day, so are more focused when you go out and do the work. But this is, of course, today we have some athletes like Ingrid from Norway. They are full-time runners, of course, and that's okay. They're training a lot and staying away. But this is guys, and I think more the guys can do this. If you are working with women, they are thinking a little bit different. And that was one of the things Johan Kagestad said when he was my coach. He was thinking as a man and trying to give me the advice he gave to the men. And that don't fit me. So I make this, that Johan had to think differently. So I used the same principle for the man he was training. And a lot of runners did really well. So it's important to do the right training, but I don't believe in 24-hour focus on your own body. But that's the way maybe I'm old-fashioned thinking, but I think a lot of the runners can look back and see what happened, for sure, in Norway, for example. In the 80s, we had a lot of good runners in the 80s, and we have not good runners now. We have the Ingebrigtsen and some 1 and 2 more, but then on the women's side, no. The best woman in the marathon now is 2:33. And you are then many kilometers behind the best in the world.
Yeah, here in the United States, we are seeing that the top end of the sport is improving. So our records are falling, but you're absolutely right that if we go back to the 1980s and we look at, for example, how many men from the United States were breaking 2:20, it was many more from the 1980s, because they weren't afraid of having a full-time job and training hard at the same time. And now it's either you go pro right out of college or you go get a job.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think,
but of course the time has changed. We were born in the 50s, not far after the Second World War. So everything was different. So of course the young people today, they are in another world. So yeah, I can understand them, but even then, if I have been in the 20s today, living in Norway, and looked back and seen what did they do, the girls and the boys who was best in the 80s. What did they do? Training and so. And if they don't work, then maybe we can do a little bit more training, but change totally. I don't know why, because if I haven't been 22 years today, I think I've asked some of the old-fashioned runners, what did you do? Without watches, without GPS watches, without the new really good shoes, all this and compression tights and all this stuff, and they run even faster than they do today. Not the best, the highest level, because they have been professional. They are 100% professional. but like Bill Roger in the US, he was not professional. He was running because he liked to run and he trained a lot, and he was a happy guy. So so he was one of the guys from the US who was going to Sweden and Norway and run big races when I started to run in the early 80s. I remember he was in Sweden when I ran, and yeah, he was he's a nice nice person.
Yes, you're highlighting one of the downsides to the professionalization of our sport. And yes, there are many good qualities from the past that I wish we could have retained. Because yes, technology, advancements, that's all good, but I think we've lost maybe some connection to the past. And that's why I wanted to bring you on, Ingrid, because you are a fountain of wisdom. And I think we need to hear this, young and old alike. And it's a shame that the people in Norway, it sounds like to me, don't respect what you have to say as much, because they really should.
Yeah, but that's also a little bit problem. If I had been a man in Norway, I think I have been asked. But
Yep,
there's so many men who wants to be coach to people who wants them to be good. But I try to tell, say, now I'm getting old, so it's not so important anymore. But 15 years ago, I could say, if I had been so happy to coach people who could beat my records, I will be really happy. I'm not coaching to be a worldwide known coach, because I had been a worldwide good runner. That was the most important for me. So I could be so happy to help girls or boys to be as good as I have been with my type of training and happiness with running. So no, I haven't been happy in Norway, but maybe it's something I say, I don't know. But the knowledge I had from my running career, from I was 15 years old to I was 40, I was an athlete on the Norwegian team. So that's many years. It's many years, and now I've been coaching for 25 years. So it's getting a lot of knowledge of how people are thinking today. So I try to switch them to think a little bit in the 80s, way of 80s thinking.
Well, it reminds me of a famous quote. A prophet is not welcome in his homeland. And,
No.
you know, Arthur Lydiard, the great coach out of New Zealand, he was never accepted either in his homeland. He had to go abroad to other national federations to teach.
Yeah,
so
of
maybe,
course. And Lydiard, in my coach was a Lydiard fan, but he made a lot of the Lydiard principles, and not only the long easy run then, but something in between. But the long run is better than too much speed, because it's easy to get injury if you go too much speed on the training. More people can make it slow and easy than fast and going fast and a little bit less. I don't know what people you are coaching, but if you coach, for example, a 10,000 meter runner, it's better to let them run a little bit too slow than a little bit too fast.
Yeah. So your coach was a Lydiard disciple. I want to go back to the coaching piece of this before we continue with our training questions, because it sounds like both you and I deal with the everyday runner.
Yeah.
Not the elites, but the everyday runner. What do you think is important for a coach to know or to do to have success with these athletes, just from a relationship standpoint, like communication and trust and those types of things?
I think it's important when for example, a guy or a girl around 35 is coming to me, 35, they have 2 kids, full job, and they wants to have advice on how to train. They wants to come under 40 minutes on a 10K or a plan to run a marathon in a year. And then the first thing I ask them, have you spoken to your wife or your husband what your plans are? Because when you plan to run a marathon in 1 year, you have to do a lot of training besides your work and besides your kids. So it's important that this is a whole family goal. And they always ask me why. Yeah, because if you go training special in holidays and so on, it's important that your wife or your husband know why you are doing this. Because your plan is going to New York Marathon or going to Chicago, or going to Stockholm, and for to do a marathon, it's important that this is a goal for you. And also after that, it's you have to think what you are doing. You are working, you have this and this and this, so you can't look on what the best runners are doing, because in Norway now, too many is doing the same as the Ingebrigtsen brothers. And if they do what Ingebrigtsen brothers doing, like 200 meters hill run every Saturday, everybody's doing this in Norway. And we have now run slower, because the Ingebrigtsen brothers, they are doing a lot of other things during the week. But these guys and girls, they haven't had time for doing all the other things. So they're doing intervals 3 times a week and maybe 2 slow runs. And then it's too much interval instead of the easy runs. So I tried to tell them that when I was on my top level, I ran 2 times interval, never getting lactic acid in my body when I was training. And the third one was something between steady state training, a little bit slower than a half marathon pace, if you're telling this speed. So I try to educate them to understand that you are you, Ingebrigtsen are Ingebrigtsen. You have to go step by step, and we have to communicate and get them. I test them on my way of testing, and give them programs for every week, and need feedback from them. I use the Garmin Connect, so I communicate with my athletes every day. If they do something I don't like, running too fast or too high pulse, I tell them, if you keep going like this, you get injury or sick or something after 1 or 2, 3 weeks. And somebody's are laughing, but after 3 weeks, they get the injury or they get sick. So I try to tell them how this is for your body. It's not so easy if you have 1 month free from work and you are traveling away from your family. You can train as much as you want, sleep and run. You can't run more because your body is not prepared to take this for weeks, because then something happen. So educate them to listen to their body, because nobody is the same. If you have 10 person, give the same program to 10 person, have the same goal. Maybe one will be happy, but the 9 other, it's maybe some of them can train more, or no, some can have to train slower, some can have higher speed. So it's important to have a good communication with the athletes you are training. So for me, I don't like to train too many online and so on, because then I feel I can't keep up with them every day. So every evening I'm sitting with my Mac and looking on Garmin Connect and see what people are doing and give them advice back. And now and then we have communication on telephone. So that's the way of my coaching now for most of my athletes. But that was the same with my coach. I saw my coach maybe in the season once a week at most. And this was before mobile phone. And I had not phone at home. So I had to go to a telephone box in the middle of city and call up my coach. So the order was by letter before the email. So it took 4 days before I can get answer. So it's you had to think a little bit more by yourself. You don't. So I think we learn a little bit more in the 80s then, compared to the day, because today it's so much connection you can get back so easy. So I'm surprised that not more people is getting better.
Yeah, and I think that if you're a good coach, you eventually train your runners to learn how to do these things on their own, and they don't depend on you as much.
Without the coach. Okay. You get yourself over. They don't need you after a while. That's the way I try to coach them. That I try to learn the athletes to coach themselves. But you can, like me then, can be I can speak with them now and then if they have questions about what to do. Now I'm going for competing in 30 degrees, how prepare, how to do the race in the heat, or such things. They need the coach then if they come to new things they have never done before.
Great. Okay, so in summary, these athletes should consider their lifestyle, the amount of support that they have around them. Mm-hmm. They shouldn't copy the training of the elites, like double threshold sessions like the Ingrid Brixens are doing, and have a balanced approach to training. So let's say, Ingrid, you have someone, and again, this is just a general example. But if someone can only train 5-6 days a week, they're working full time, how many of those days would you say is an interval training day, or an easy day, that type of thing?
If they can train 5 or 6 days a week, I will say you can do 2 times interval a day, a week. And one of the intervals is more like steady state training, like trying to get a higher and higher speed with lower and lower pulse. You start, for example, running 10K and you have a threshold, let me see, 179 pulse rate. Train a little bit under 179, don't push it too high, and you look at your heart rate and at the speed, you can see the speed, and you maybe in the beginning run 4 minutes per K. I'm using K, minute per K, this is standard in Norway. And then after, maybe if you train on the right way, maybe in 3 weeks time, instead of running 4 minutes per K, you can run 350 per K. Then it's getting better. So it's the heart rate who's making the training session at the right way. So, and as I also tells my athletes, sometimes you suddenly, after 3 weeks, maybe running with higher pulse, slower speed. And it's not because you are getting worse, bad performance, but maybe that's because you have been working too hard, you have been to a big party, or you are starting to have a cold or something, that's the reason. So go back again and try, keep going, and maybe the next week is back on track again. So it's not, the body is not as an engine. You have to listen to. So that's the for me to tell my athletes that you have to see your heart rate. This is more important than the speed. And then they said to me, but I need to run 3:50 to get my gold. Yes, but you are not, that's your gold, but you are not on a gold. You are not there now. So you have to go step by step to come to the gold. So if you start to run at the gold speed, maybe you never get there. So that's one of the sessions, interval sessions for a person who runs 5-6 times a week, and the other one can be an interval, and there can be everything from 15 seconds, 15, 15. It's a good session. 15 on and 15 slow, or what do you call it? Not slow, but
like not a jog, but
yeah,
like
I mean,
moderate.
you run 15 and speeding up in 15, also run a little bit slower. If you do that for 10 minutes and 5 minutes jog, and do it for 10 minutes, then you get a little bit of speed. So you get higher speed, and you can get, if you do, for example, 5 times 5 minutes. That's also good training, but it's slower speed. So it's a change between 15, and I have a lot of different intervals, up to 2 times 50 minutes. It's the longest, or 2 times 4K or something like that. So they don't have this to see the speed every week. It's going slower or faster, but they have different every week. So after some weeks they're going back to the same, and then I'm getting more speed, even I haven't been running fast. But it's the way of you.
Yeah,
That
that's
was the
psychology.
training who helps me.
Right.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're a big believer in heart rate training.
Yes, I am believing in heart rate training.
Okay.
Because or especially now after the COVID, I have a lot of athletes now who had problem with the COVID-19, and they had got a higher heart rate after they had COVID, and they have used a little bit of time to get back. One of the guys have been slow coming back, and now he's better than before he got the COVID. But he was very frustrated for a time, because the speed was so much slower than he used to. And I said, be careful, don't push, this will come. And now the last week he is back even better than he was before. And it took him maybe 2-3 months since he building up. So I believe in heart rate, because we have these good watches now. Heart rate is a more, I think that I never had I don't believe in taking
lactate
no,
meters, right?
no. Because then I think also that it's too much. It's so important to do this lactate on the right same way every time. It's so many things you can be wrong. So if you have the heart, it's easier, because the heart rate tells you as much as the lactate, and then you don't need to do all with all this blood in.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who's doing the lactate, even slow runners, like fun runners, doing this in Norway now. So it's funny.
And unless you know your true blood values, the whatever number millimoles of lactate doesn't mean anything unless you know what your true threshold is.
That's true. Yeah. So I think that if you use the washes on the right way, that's a good, really good to use. Also for the coach who can get it in the mobile at half an hour after the athletes have done the training, so you can come with your advice then direct after they have been training.
So now, Ingrid, as we wrap up our talk here today, I always finish by doing what we call a rapid fire segment with the coaches that come onto the show. So what that means is I'll give you a topic, a training topic, and you tell me whatever comes to mind. You might have a strong opinion on it, or you might have no opinion, and then we can just skip it. But the idea is to give like a quick answer, whatever comes to mind.
I will try.
Because there's quite a few, so I like to see if we can get as far down the list as possible. So here we go. Do you prefer to work with an athlete's strengths or weaknesses? Or let me say that differently. Do you prefer to focus on an athlete's strengths or weaknesses? So if you notice that, for example, a runner struggles with one workout, like a threshold or long run or interval, would you give them more of that stuff or focus on their strengths?
Yeah, I don't think I will give them more of it, but they're getting more focused when they're doing that kind of training. Because if they do more of it, I think it's maybe they can help them, but I'm afraid can be getting worse. But more focused on the weakness, because I know that for me, I got focused. My coach gave me focus on my weakness, and I started to train on my weakness. That wasn't so fun in the beginning, but when I saw that the focus on the weakness gave me getting better, then I believed in it. So I didn't more of it, but I had more focused when I did that kind of training.
Okay. Yeah, it can be uncomfortable. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. It can be uncomfortable, but it's necessary, and it becomes easier over time.
It's necessary to get the next step to reach your goal, because it's not so fun to train on your weakness. It's more fun to do what you feel is nice.
Right. Okay, next one. Are there any training modalities like plyometrics or gym work that you think can make a big impact on performance?
You mean strength training and so?
Strength training, yes, exactly.
I myself almost never do that kind of training. I did a little bit for my hips and a little bit for my legs, but the most I say you have to train on what you are preparing for. If you're a runner, it's the best is to run, but if your body don't can make it as much, you need to do something else besides, like biking, running in water, go on. But I don't believe in too much strength training. No, it's not. If you're too strong in one of your muscles, if you don't have enough blood to come to these strong muscles. So the most important is the heart and your lungs. Now I'm speaking as a coach for long distance runners. what you need when you are going to be a sprinter and so on is different thing, but this is hard. So yeah, that's the way I'm thinking.
Did your coach, Coach Kagastad, did he have you do Lydiard style bounding up the hills, for example? Or
Yes, some of the strange training I give my athletes is sprungloaf. Or you know what sprungloaf is?
No, what's
No,
that?
it's more like and we call it sprungloaf is a small and hill, and 10 seconds where you use your more like a sprinter, so you have a real high, the legs is going high, and you're getting the heart is going up, but because you're doing in 10 seconds, it's not hard, too hard. And walking down and doing this, I did it 3 times a week after easy training, or my speed training was, and I said to all my athletes, after all the running is 1 hour or less, you need to run 6 stignings, running faster and faster for the starting, and running faster and faster for 80, 100 meter, and jogging back again, and do this 6 times to getting a little bit more speed.
Strides.
This is one strides, yeah. This is one of the most what helped me as a runner. These 2 things gave me a little bit more stronger legs and also more speed. I had speed, but I had enough speed to run 10,000 meters in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
and I would argue that if you're doing those things in training, you are strength training. That's one form of strength training.
Yeah, but it's not having a big and going
Weights.
down. No,
Yeah,
not with the weights. No, not with weights. With your own body.
Yeah.
Mm.
So we've talked about threshold training, and that's a very hot topic right now, especially with Norwegian training. How would you determine someone's threshold pace, or for that matter, any training pace? I would imagine your answer to that would be based on heart rates.
Yes.
Okay, so
I used when you, or you can say that heart rate is the threshold. I used to things like this. If you find a threshold heart rate, it's not one heart rate. It's, for example, for me, when I was training, I had a threshold like 177 to 177 to 180. And when I did, for example, 10 times 1,000 meter, I ran never the first 4, 5 up to the threshold, because in the rest between I ran jogging around for 1 minute. So if I started too hard heartbeat, the finish one, then I got really stiff lactic acid. So if I did, maybe I could be as good as I became, but for me it was important to think, I'm doing training tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and so on, and in 2 days as I will do tempo training. So then it's important to have energy to do this. So if you go over the heartbeat threshold, you use 13 times more energy. So getting longer time to recover, but maybe a person who is doing nothing else than training can do it. I don't know, because they can rest the rest of the day. But for me and for the athletes I'm working with, it's important to don't push. And what's the most interesting then with the people I'm working with is they're getting better and better if they are doing this type of things. And if they want to go over this threshold, go to competition, fun run, cheap for example, 5K, run as fast as you want. The heart rate can be as high as you want. And then you say, if you're running 50 minutes, yes. If you're running 7 minutes, 17 minutes, 2 minutes too slow. And then go back to what you have done in the training and see what have I done since last time I ran the 5K. Or maybe you have been training too hard then. Often had the people trained too hard, the intervals too hard. That's my what I have found out of my training and the people I'm training in this type of thinking. Then.
How did you know that your threshold heart rate range was between 177 and 180? Was that based on your heart rate during a half marathon or a little slower than that?
I was trained, I was tested sometimes on a treadmill in a lab. It was in health starting of the lab and all this that at that time. And when I think there was almost this heart rate I had during the whole half marathon. I was 106, and you ran around 1 hour hard in 1 hour. If you can keep going and hard and an hour, you are almost on the on your threshold. That was something you can think. But of course, a person who ran a little bit slower and using more than an hour and 1:15 on a half marathon, maybe it's a little bit not as high. I'm not sure, but a little bit. But I'm using my treadmill and I have to find out this for people who are at this level, at least more like fun runners and the people I'm working with. So it's not too professional looking, too difficult. Make it easy, let people feel what you think now. You feel when you are over. If you go from some 1,000 meters, you feel when you're over. I'm sure you feel when you are over the threshold.
Yes.
So then I think it's smart to keep under.
Yes. I do it a little differently, but there are many ways to arrive at those numbers. I test my athletes' velocity at VO2 max, and then I take a percentage of that.
The VO2 max.
Yeah.
But some, for example, for me, I was very high up compared to the VO2 max, my threshold. But I have athletes today is much lower. So if you go as a look at the top level athletes, they have higher percentage of the VO2 max than and more like supermotionist, not the best and not the slowest, but something who wants to be up there. So it's always difficult, but you need to tell the athlete how they feel. When you start to breathe too heavily, you have touched the threshold.
Okay, and let's just do 2 more because I'm having so much fun that I can keep you here for 3 hours. So just 2 more.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite marathon workout? Maybe one that you used to do when you were training or anything like that?
One of them, I used some of the training I did. It was also for the 5 and 10, but it's a good marathon training too. I ran often on my treadmill. I warm up for 10 minutes in a speed. It's let me see, what can it be? I don't know the speed, but it was easy running. And then I ran 10 minutes, 5 minutes in 4-minute K, and 10 minutes in 3:10, 5 minutes in 4 minutes, 10 minutes in 3:10 again. And then I ran 5 minutes. So I ran a little bit faster and my marathon pace. But I ran 10 minutes in 3:20, 10 minutes in 3:15, and 5 minutes in 3:10. And between this was 5 minutes for 4 minutes per K. So I'm warming up for 4K and running down in 4K. So it was a long run. But if I don't getting over my threshold heart rate, I was good.
Okay.
And if I didn't make it, if it's getting too hard, I wasn't good enough to doing what I want to do. So that was a good training. So I did always kind of this before I went to marathon. And I said, yes, no, I'm in shape. Of course, I knew I had done the long runs and my legs could do that. All marathon runners know that it's getting really hard for your legs when you have been passing 35K. The race started after 35K. So, but this kind of training was good training. And also another training where I did was 10 times 45, 15. Also 45 seconds fast, 15 slow. And then I ran for, I took a 5 minutes jog. And I ran 5K steady state, a little bit slower than the threshold, 5 minutes jog, and then 6 times 1 minute and 20 seconds jog. That was also good. You have you have speed and long and speed. So it's make the training training a little bit more interesting and then going for one speed then. And of course, the other one was going steady state for maybe 15K or a little bit slower than the threshold.
Okay. Can I go back to the first example just to make sure I understand that one? So you were on the treadmill and you're alternating between some running faster than race pace and some running slower than race pace.
Yeah.
And how big was that session in terms of overall volume?
Kilometers? Oh, the kilometers could be 10, 18, 20K total. Okay. The whole, but there was maybe 10, 11 was okay speed. And you had 7, 8 working up and jogging down.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's a great workout.
11. Yeah, that was the workout. So I believe in not too long workouts.
That is a theme that I've noticed from this interview. It keeps coming out. You don't have to do too much volume. You just have to make it like good quality. And
if you have quality, as the young orienteer, have been working with him since he was 16 and now he's 20. And he had a lot of speed before he came to me. And now he's running a lot of K during a week, but he's using less time because all the training is faster because he's running on heart rate. And now he can run even the long runs is going fast compared to some years ago because he was tired and after really hard workouts he had before he came to me. So it's he as he said now that he's more fresh after these hard workouts now than he was before, and now we can run more and a little bit faster on the days between. So it's a many way to who's going to Rome, as I used to say.
Yes.
But I believe in this.
I do too, and it's working. It worked for you. It's working for
Yeah,
your runners.
yeah.
I think this is a great place to leave it. But is there anything I didn't ask you or anything you'd like to say here at the end? Or did we pretty much cover everything?
I think we covered a lot of the training. As I told, I believe in having the eggs in different places. So if you get injury, you have something else to do. So if you used to say to young people who wants to be athletes that I think you can study at the same time, but you don't need to finish as fast as the normal study. Let me see. The study will take you 4 years. But if you are an athlete on the side, you can maybe use 6 or 7 years. But it's nice to have something else, special if something happens. If you get injured or something else, you have other people around you who can speak with you without training and the injuries and all this stuff. Then you can speak with these people about the lessons, what you are studying. You have more, as you use your head. Besides, you are also using your legs. But of course, being a good athlete, you need to have a good, but it's not the same brain capacity as if you are a doctor, have a PhD in something. Being a good runner, like young Ingrid Jakob, he has almost no school. He's a young guy, and he has a really good brain for running.
Yes.
Now he knows what to do, and he do it. So I think it's something. He will even if you have been his coach, if I have been his coach, I think he has been the same. He has been the world's best even.
It's
But
talent.
he is,
Yep.
he's the talent, but he gets helped from somebody who can help him. Say no, yes, no, yes, but he use his there to do the right thing for him.
Whatever you do, be committed to that and have a backup plan because your
I have a
running
backup
is
plan.
never
And I
gonna.
think,
Yeah.
a backup plan, I think that's good. I always had a backup plan. I had study, I had family, good friends outside the running. My more than 90% of all my friends when I was a top athlete was not athlete at all. They was normal people. And for me, that was good because then I could speak with people don't thinking about the training and running.
Yeah.
But that was good enough in the 80s. Maybe that's not good enough. No, I don't know.
No, that's ageless wisdom.
Yeah.
Well, Ingrid, I cannot thank you enough for doing me this honor. It's amazing when you reach out to a rock star like yourself, a legend in the sport of distance running, and that legend agrees to talk to you from halfway across the world. I have felt like a kid in a candy store this almost 2 hours now, and I've learned so much.
Yeah, we have been there for 2 hours, yes. But that's good. I hope you can use this to something.
How can our listeners connect with you if they want to go deeper on what we've shared today, like maybe a website or something like that where they can reach
I
out
have
to you?
a website, but that's in Norwegian then. But I have an address there and an email, and I got many more people from all over the world asking me for something than Norwegians, for sure.
Okay. So if it's
One of the people who asked me many years ago was Paula Radcliffe, because she was a 3,000 meter runner and she wants to go over to marathon. And I remember I said to her then, if you start with the marathon training, you will be even better on the 3,000. And she didn't believe me, but she did it, and she became much better also on the 3,000. So it's the same training. It's the nice mix of long, short, and fun training.
Awesome.
So
Okay.
she called me, or she made most of the people write me an email.
Okay, I will include your email in the show
Yeah.
notes.
Mhm.
And now for Ingrid Kristiansen, I am Jonathan Mederos, wishing everybody well. And until next time, be thankful that you can run and for what running has given you. That's it. Thank you, Ingrid.
Yes.